The Aztec Empire wasn't supposed to exist. It started with a group of wanderers. Nobody wanted living in a swamp. Nobody valued following a prophecy nobody could verify. And yet, somehow, these outsiders built one of the most powerful, wealthy, and feared civilizations in the Americas, complete with massive pyramids, floating farms, warrior elites, and one of the busiest markets in the world. It's a story full of brilliance and brutality, innovation and intimidation, and a rise so fast it feels almost impossible. And then just when the empire reached its peak, everything collapsed even faster. Not because of Spanish superiority, but because of alliances, diseases, political chaos, and a series of mistakes that would make any modern strategist wince. So today, we're going to rewind the rise and fall of the Aztec Empire, what really happened, how they built an empire on water, and why it all fell apart in a shockingly short amount of time. Let's dive in. If you tried to build an empire from scratch in the middle of a swamp, most people would call you insane. But the Aztecs didn't just do it. They built one of the most powerful, wealthy, and complex civilizations in the Americas, all in less time than it takes some modern cities to finish a highway project. And then, just as fast, it all collapsed. Not because they were primitive, not because the Spanish had superior everything, but because of a perfect storm of politics, disease, betrayal, and some really unlucky timing. So let's rewind to the beginning, long before pyramids, gold, and warrior legends. The Aztecs weren't born powerful. In fact, they started as outsiders nomads, wandering around central Mexico looking for a home. Worse than that, they were considered the weird neighbors nobody wanted to live next to. Cities kept kicking them out, and in some places, they were allowed to stay only if they agreed to do the worst jobs like ditch digging or being hired as mercenaries. It's not exactly the glamorous beginning of a great empire, but every empire starts somewhere. According to their own legends, the Aztecs were guided by a prophecy they would find their homeland when they saw an eagle perched on a cactus holding a snake in its beak. Whether or not this event actually happened, the way the story says, something clearly inspired them. Around 1325, they arrived in a valley filled with several powerful cities, and one giant problem: all the good land was already taken. The Aztecs' solution: build their city on a swampy island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. A terrible idea for anyone who values dry socks, but a brilliant idea for defense and agriculture. They named it Tenochtitlan, and what they built there was incredible. Imagine Venice, but bigger, cleaner, and run with ruthless efficiency. They created chinampas, floating gardens that produced tons of food. They built massive causeways that connected the island to the mainland. They engineered canals to control water levels. Visitors from Europe later described Tenochtitlan as one of the most beautiful cities they had ever seen. And all of this came from people who just a few generations earlier were wandering the countryside, looking for a sign. As Tenochtitlan grew, so did the Aztecs' ambitions. They formed the Triple Alliance with two neighboring cities, Texcoco and Tlacopan. Together, they became the region's unstoppable power trio. Through military strategy and smart politics, the alliance conquered city after city across central Mexico. But let's be very honest, the Aztec Empire didn't operate like a modern nation. It was more like a pay your taxes and nobody gets hurt system. Conquered regions had to send enormous amounts of tribute cacao beans, gold jade feathers, textiles, food, and luxury goods straight to Tenochtitlan. Refuse to pay, and the Aztec army would be at your door the next morning. This tribute made the Aztec capital one of the richest places on the continent. Tlatelolco, the empire's main marketplace, was huge, buzzing with tens of thousands of people every day. Merchants traveled for weeks to sell goods from all over Mesoamerica. It was a globalized economy before globalization had a name. The Aztecs even had schools for all children, a legal system, complex poetry, advanced architecture, and an economy built on agriculture, trade, and tribute. But eventually, you can't explain the Aztec Empire without talking about something everyone knows: human sacrifice. And here's the thing, most people get this entirely wrong. Hollywood exaggerates it, textbooks oversimplify it, and almost nobody explains what it actually meant. Human sacrifice wasn't random violence. It was a deeply structured religious belief tied to their worldview. The Aztecs believed the sun needed energy to rise, the gods needed nourishment, and the universe depended on balance. In their religion, sacrifice wasn't cruelty, it was cosmic maintenance. But it wasn't just religious. It was also political. Many of the people sacrificed were prisoners of war from cities the Aztecs had conquered. This created a terrifying incentive: keep fighting and keep capturing. In a way, the empire's belief system pushed it into endless expansion. And endless expansion creates endless enemies. Which brings us to 1519, the year everything changed. A Spanish conquistador named Hernán Cortés landed on the coast of Mexico with a small army and a very big ego. The Aztecs didn't know who he was. They had never seen metal armor horses or gunpowder before. Some records suggest they wondered if he might be connected to a prophecy. Other sources say they were simply trying to figure out how dangerous he was. Either way, they brought Cortés into the capital instead of kicking him out. And spoiler, that was a mistake. But let's clear something up right now. The Spanish did not destroy the Aztec Empire because they were superhumans with superior weapons. They destroyed it because almost every major kingdom in the region hated the Aztecs and jumped at the chance to help Cortés. The Tlaxcalans, for example, became crucial allies to the Spanish. Thousands of native warriors fought beside Cortés. Without them, the Spanish would have been crushed within weeks. Then came the real killer, smallpox. Someone in the Spanish crew brought the disease with them, and it spread far faster than any army could move. The Aztecs had no immunity. Entire communities collapsed. Leaders died. Warriors fell sick. Even the emperor Cuitlahuac died from smallpox shortly after taking the throne. When historians talk about European advantages, disease was the nuclear weapon of the 1500s. With their population collapsing, their allies turning against them, and their political structure in chaos, the Aztecs were hit from all directions. In 1521, after a long siege and brutal fighting, Tenochtitlan fell. The once mighty city of canals, causeways, markets, and temples was reduced to rubble. The Spanish rebuilt Mexico City on its ruins. And just like that, one of the greatest empires in the Americas disappeared. Not because they were weak, but because they were unlucky enough to face disease betrayal, a relentless foreign invader, and a structure that made them too many enemies. But the Aztec legacy didn't vanish. It survived in language, food culture, and identity. Nahuatl words like chocolate, tomato, avocado, and coyote are now used around the world. Many agricultural techniques, especially chinampas, are still admired by modern engineers. And the symbolism of the eagle on the cactus. You can find it today on the flag of Mexico. The Aztec story didn't end with the fall of Tenochtitlan, it evolved. So what can we learn from this? The Aztecs rose quickly because they were adaptable, driven, and innovative. And they fell quickly because even the strongest empire can collapse when too many crises hit at once. In just under 200 years, they went from unwanted outsiders to rulers of a vast empire, and then to victims of one of the biggest turning points in world history. Which raises an interesting question. If the Aztecs had never encountered the Spanish, how far could their civilization have gone? So that's the true story of the Aztec Empire, a civilization that rose from nothing, engineered one of the greatest cities in the world, dominated an entire region, and then collapsed under the weight of foreign invaders, deadly disease, and the enemies they created along the way. Their empire lasted less than 200 years, but their influence is everywhere in food language, mythology, architecture, and the identity of modern Mexico. The Aztecs weren't monsters or mystics. They were humans building something extraordinary under impossible conditions. Their achievements echo long after their fall, and their legacy survives in ways they could have never imagined. And it leaves us with one final question. If fate, timing, and disease hadn't aligned against them, what might the Aztec Empire have become? If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more stories behind the rise and collapse of the world's great civilizations, stick around. There's a lot more to explain.